Singapore versus Australia. Where is a better investment? We're going to debunk mathematically why Australia is going to smash Singapore for Singaporeans to invest into Australia. I'm an Aussie property pro who knows your market better than your own agents, and I'm here to expose why. Singapore's property game right now is rigged for failure. Picture this, you're a Singaporean investor who wants to buy a second property for $1 million. You will need $774,600 in cash. And please do remember this number as I'll be mentioning it throughout the video. I've seen clients ditch this very trap in Singapore and make bank right here in Australia. And I'm spilling the secrets. So stick with me because I'm about to break down why mathematically Singapore is killing your wealth and how Australia is making smart Singaporeans rich, and how you can get a free flight and a 2-night stay right here in Australia to see it for yourself. So let's rip all of this apart. So imagine with me that I am a Singaporean investor, just like you, a Singaporean citizen. So right now I own an HDB, my first home, and I want a second property to build wealth. Probably looking at about Singapore $1 million, 1-bedroom condo, nothing crazy fancy. But Singapore's got a trap waiting for me. Check this ABSD chart right here. Even as a citizen, I am hit with a 20% ABSD. That is $200,000 in SGD gone. Plus the regular buyer stamp duty at 2.46%. That is $24,600. That's a whopping $224,600 in total in taxes before even I get started with buying a 1 million SGD condo. And when it comes to financing this property, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, limits my loan to 45%, which means I can only borrow up to 450,000 SGD on this $1 million purchase that I want to make on this Singaporean condo. So I need 550,000 SGD as the remainder in cash as a down payment for the purchase of this property. Plus that $224,600 in taxes that I cannot get financing for. In total, the cash that I need to buy a 1 million SGD property is $774,600 in cash. So in my particular scenario as a Singaporean investor, let's say I earn 150,000 SGD a year. That is 12,500 SGD a month after taxes. So that's $774,600. That's 5 years worth of my entire income, assuming that I don't eat, I don't live, I don't have any friends or any family members. So what do I do if I don't have $774,600 in cash to shell out on my $1 million condo? I can turn to my CPF. At the end of the day, Singapore always finds me a way to build my wealth, right? Well, not really. It doesn't really look like that. So what I do is I check in my ordinary account under my CPF where I can use up to $300,000 or 30% of the value of the property for the down payment of my new investment property that I want. But on my $150,000 a year in salary, I'm putting roughly about $20,000 a year into my OA under my CPF. Now, this means I will either take or has already taken probably 15 years to hit $300,000 in my OA under CPF. So let's say I did have $300,000 under my OA in my CPF. Well, I guess it does help, but I got to realize that is this somebody else's money or is this really just my money? Spending that $300K in my OA under my CPF doesn't actually make this property deal become any better from its intrinsic value point of view. It's just bleeding my own cash from another form of savings for yet just another lousy investment in Singapore. And not to mention, typically if this is a property I am going for after my HDB, then my CPF OA is likely be depleted already from my first HDB purchase. This is something that the statistics of Singapore dictates. And then there's the total debt servicing ratio, the TDSR. MAS caps all my repayments, HDB, car, student loans, even my Gucci splurges at 55% of my income. So that would be about $82,500 a year, or that's about $6,875 a month. Okay, this all sounds decent enough. Well, then let's break it down, see if it actually works. Well, my HDB loan costs about $21,000 a year. I have a nice car because I earn big bucks. So my car loan is about $20,000 a year. My student loan point is about $10,000 a year, and that's $51,000 already. Now that leaves $31,500 worth of annual servicing for the $450,000 condo loan that I'm trying to go for, which costs about $25,000 a year at 4% over 30 years. Sure, this is within the limits of 31.5K, and I can spend 25K of that, I guess, but I am stretched pretty thin. One wrong move and I am done. Not to mention, if I up my budget for the new condo that I want, then I am pretty much stuffed. So after I think about all of this, I want to know, what am I actually getting with a property when I spend $1 million SGD? How's my rental yield going to be? Well, it's going to be about 3% in rental yield. So about $30,000 a year, barely covering the interest that I need to pay. Also, what kind of properties am I actually getting? Look at these shoe boxes. Are you telling me that I got to come up with $774,600 in cash up front for these properties? Absolutely no way. Okay, well, apparently a lot of this is going to go up and I'm going to be actually making a lot of money because properties are going to go up all the time, right? And I'm not going to pay any capital gains tax. Okay, well then let's look at the no capital gains tax benefit in Singapore. It sounds nice, but you got to realize that I am already down by $224,600 up front. I need 22.46% growth on the $1 million just to grow to 1.2446 million just to break even, which means to make no money at all. And even if I hit that in 5 years, I am pocketing absolutely nothing. So imagine having your property grow by more than 20%. That's got to be a good thing, right? But in Singapore, you aren't keeping any of it. All that growth in the name of free capital gains tax is not yours at all. Singapore really is not for wealth building. It's designed to keep you common while the uber rich get richer. Now imagine that I am a Singaporean investor looking at Australia, where smart Singaporeans are making bank right now. I'm eyeing off a $1 million Aussie off the plan, 2-bedroom, state-of-the-art, located in a location where the best tenant of the market wants to reside in Australia's major cities, ranked world's most livable, with booming population, growth set for double-digit plus capital gains. These properties are so wonderful, so in demand, I won't have tenant problems. Young professionals and families fight for them. Compare that to Singapore's shoebox condos. This $1 million Aussie property gets me a luxury space and tenants begging to move in. Okay, so save the sales talk. I'm too smart to be sold. I want real numbers. Okay, well then let's talk real numbers, shall we? First, let's look into the costs. 1 million Aussie dollars gets me the property. But what does the government want to slug from me? My guard is up because I'm used to getting ripped off by government, so I need to know what's going on in Australia. Starting with stamp duty. Well, stamp duties for off-the-plan properties is slashed, and it's calculated on the value of the property without the construction component. So the one I'm looking at is an off-the-plan apartment, say $1 million, where $800,000 of that is the build cost. So in Victoria, stamp duty is 5.5%. So that'll make it $200,000 multiplied by 5.5%, grand totaling $11,000 in stamp duty. Okay, not so bad. What's next? For an investment review board, this is an application fee, and take a look at this chart. And it looks like for a $1 million property, I'm going to be out about $15,100. Okay, nothing too bad so far again. And apparently I also need to pay Victoria's foreign buyer surcharge at 8%, which on the $1 million purchase I'm trying to make is going to be about $80,000. Okay, so that brings me up to a total of $106,100 Australian. Okay, so let's compare that to the Singapore, where the additional prices that you pay on top of the property is $224,600 in taxes. Australia is only $106,100. It's a bargain. Okay, so I'm getting warmer to buy this property off the plan. Then what do I need to do? Well, what I need to do is I only need to pay about 10% deposit on that $1 million, which is about $100,000 Aussie, held in trust until the completion of the building, which is going to happen in 2 to 3 years time. So if I've got some money saved up, this is more than doable, unlike Singapore's $774,600. Now let's talk about rental yields. Australia's rental market is on fire. As you can see here, ABC News reports 240,000 homes per year in shortage. This means that right now in Australia, I can get 6% a year, which is $60,000 on a $1 million purchase. And that's doable. And compare that with Singapore's 3%. Come on. Australia's beating this once again. Capital growth. Well, Australia's cities are set for double digits annually, driven by population booms and livability. So if my $1 million apartment hits $1.2 million in 2 years, as in by the time it completes building, I've made $200,000 without spending a single cent. I lock in a $1 million price with my $100,000 deposit, and the value climbs during the construction because of the market factors. Now here, I'm going to briefly jump out of character and tell you that as a property professional, I've seen numerous clients do this where they buy off the plan, wait, and cash out big when they sell just before or upon the building finishing, and they do this across multiple properties. So if they find themselves with about $500,000 in cash, they will put it across 5 different properties like this. Smart Singaporeans are doing this right now. So how do I, a Singaporean investor, buy an off-the-plan property in Australia? What are the steps involved? And I want to get a loan as well. Okay, well, let me tell you, it's easier than Singapore's red tape circus, and I've got you covered. Step 1, it's FIRB approval. We've talked about this before. Foreigners need permission, but off-the-plan properties are already pre-approved. It costs $15,100 for a $1 million property purchase, which takes about 30 to 40 days, and my team handles it all. Step 2 is financing. Singapore bank loans count towards my TDSR, which is that 55% cap of my income to service the loan. And any amount that blasts my serviceability beyond that 55% of my income, they will just lend me less money, which means I got to come up with even more cash in Singapore. But Australian banks will issue me a loan for 80% of my property value. They do care about my Singapore debts, for example, my HDB car loans, but without the TDSR cap. Which also means if I get the loan in Australia, then it won't affect TDSR limits in Singapore for how the law stands right now. So I can borrow 80%, which is $800,000 at 6% interest over 30 years, roughly. And that's about $57,600 a year in outlay that I need to make. And this loan only needs to be settled in 2 to 3 years' time when the building actually finishes and the settlement needs to occur. And this gives me time to plan. Step 3, you just got to pick the property. I get provided with curated list of $1 million off the plan apartments, the apple of the eye, the belle of the ball for tenants, and these 2-bedroom stunners in Melbourne are so in demand. Tenants fight for them. And this ensures my 6% yield. Step 4, management. My team handles furnishing, tenant placement, and by the way, if you want to beef up your returns a little bit more, we can set it up on short-term rental platforms like Airbnb for 9 to 10% yields, which is going to bring in an income in the tune of about $90,000 to $100,000 a year. So what's my cash outlay as a Singaporean to be able to embark on this journey of Australian property ownership? So let's break it down. Australian $100,000 deposit to lock the property in, and then $11,000 in stamp duty and about $80,000 in surcharge. Now here, I didn't include the FIRB application because some developers provide perks where the application fee for the FIRB will be taken care of. Now, if I settle in 2 to 3 years time, I borrow $800,000 then, so total cash that I'll need is $191,000 and the extra $100,000, which is the balance that I'll need to pay when the property needs to settle. So in total, between now and 3 years time, that is a total of $291,000 that I will need to be paying in cash. About half of that will need to be paid at the beginning and the other half upon settlement. Of course, if I wish to sell this property before the building finishes, then I don't have to worry about paying the rest. Meanwhile, in Singapore, I had to scrape $774,600 right now if I wanted to buy a property in Singapore. And compare that to Australia's $291,000, which I can pay over a longer period of time. That well makes me smile. I pay $100,000 now, wait and settle later. If it's worth $1.2 million by the time it finishes, I made $200,000 in profit without even spending a cent. Now, if I can't settle or run out of money, that's okay. I can just cash out. I can just sell the contract and want to live there and my family wants to move in. That's not a problem. Australia is built just for me. Now here comes a really important topic. Everybody thinks that Australia charges high taxes and Singapore doesn't. Now let me tell you and do you the math right here. We're going to talk about income and capital gains tax when it comes to your property ownership and compare Singapore and Australia. I'm going to work out for you with real numbers just how much better Australia is for property investing, even when it comes to capital gains tax. We all know that Singapore has no capital gains tax. Woohoo! But when it comes to buying that $1 million condo, I need to pay the $200,000 in ABSD, $24,600 in BSD upfront. Sure, no capital gains tax. So let's say the property goes up by 30% in the next few years because God decided to love me very much after say about 3 years, okay? Which means when I sell the property, I also got to sell with what's called a seller's stamp duty at 8%, which means I got to pay tax at 8% of $1.3 million, which is about $104,000. So out of the $300,000 growth that I have enjoyed in my property, I get to keep $300,000, which is the growth portion, minus my BSD and ABSD, which I had paid up front, which is $224,600. And then I have to take out my SSD, which is seller's stamp duty, at $104,000. So my property goes up by 30%, and I sell the property only to find out that I owe the government $28,600. I make negative, that is minus $28,600. Seriously, what CGT-free hell is this? Now let's compare this to Australia. My $1 million off the plan apartment costs $11,000 in stamp duty, $15,100 in FIRB application fee, $80,000 in surcharge, a total of $106,100. And this is the money that I pay on top of the $1 million purchase that I have made. Capital gains tax, well, my gain is $300,000. Now we're going to deduct costs, which is $106,100. And my taxable gain becomes $193,900. At that income level, I'm going to be taxed about $61K in tax as a foreigner in Australia. However, this tax is only payable when I do sell within Australia. Singapore had me making negative $28,600 with most of the tax being paid up front, but Australia lets me pay when I sell the property. So even after I pay taxes and taking also into account the fees I paid up front, on that $300,000 growth on the property, I get to keep $132,900 after all taxes, which is much better than negative $28,600 in Singapore. Also, Singapore doesn't tax foreign income because of the DTAA. So whatever I made in Australia, the profits from Australia gets to come home clean. So in Australia, taxes actually allow me to win. I mean, at this point, this has got to wake you up, Singaporean investors. But can I tell you the insider secret? Because in Australia, when your property goes up by that much, people don't sell. They just re-leverage the property and buy another property. Because in Singapore, getting like a third or fourth property is gonna mean so much more taxes for you. We just explored how difficult it was getting just a second property. But here in Australia, there's nothing additional to pay for your second, third, fourth, or even your 100th property in Australia. I will explain more of this after you buy your first property with me. Now, Singapore, I'm an Aussie property pro who's helped hundreds of Singaporeans ditch your trap. I own this business called Solomon Bloom, and I've seen clients like ones who dropped 100,000 deposits on 3 off the plan apartments, total $300,000. 2 years later, each hit $1.2 million, and he sold the contracts for $600,000 in profit. No extra cash spent. I am so confident that I will guarantee that I will beat any Singapore deal that you are looking at with anything that I present to you right here in Australia. I am so confident that I would also like to offer you a free return flight and 2-night stay in Australia if you qualify to buy through me. Picture me showing you a 2-bedroom Belle of the Ball apartment in Melbourne, so in demand, tenants begging to live there, pulling $60,000 a year or $100,000 on Airbnb, costing only $1 million Australian. And you might have already noticed this looking at numbers around the screen, but 1 Singapore dollar is equal to 1.2 Australian dollars. So to buy a $1 million Australian property, you only need 834,000 in SGD. And here is the absolute knocker. I hope that what I have shown you today has woken you up, but there is more. My developer perks gives you more to seal the deal. Some developers that we work with have a reduced 5% deposit. They have cash rebates on the purchase price. They have FIRB fee waivers. And for all of your purchases, there is a 6% rental guarantee for 2 years. They also include free furnishing, rent ready. And if you want these exclusive access to the curated properties with A-list developers with our hand-picked options that will actually build you wealth, well, you are welcome, Singapore. I'm coming to Singapore on August 29 and 30, 2025 to meet, you. I will walk you through the numbers, the properties, the financing and management. Myself and my team are not just agents pushing for deals. We know every part of your pain and live and breathe real estate. Seats are limited. Check out the link in the description, book your spot in, and that free trip, I'll fly you to Australia, put you up in a luxury property and show you why and how smart Singaporeans are getting rich. Singapore keeps commoners common, but Australia can be your wealth machine. Singapore, I'm done with your game. $774,600 in SGD for a 3% yield shoebox. That's messed up. I'm showing you Australia. 6% yields, double-digit growth, taxes you can actually control. I've helped hundreds of Singaporeans and you are going to be next. Stop slaving for a system that keeps you common. Win with me, Singapore. You are welcome.